Welcome to Scrubbed In, the DVM Journey, the podcast where we dive into the wild, rewarding, and sometimes unpredictable world of becoming a doctor of veterinary medicine. I'm your host, Kipp Gaynor, a current third-year veterinary student at the Virginia, Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine. Whether you're an aspiring vet, a vet student, or just passionate about animals, this is your backstage pass into becoming a DVM. From classroom to clinic, we're sharing the insights, tips, and real-life experiences to help you thrive on your journey to becoming a vet. So scrub in, and let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Scrubbed In. I'm your host, Kipp Gaynor, a veterinary student who is passionate about medicine and increasingly curious about what it takes to own a clinic one day. Today, I'm joined by someone who's built a business from the ground up, my dad, Kipp Gaynor. While he's not in veterinary medicine, his journey through entrepreneurship has a lot to teach us about leadership, risk, and resilience. So, Dad, thanks for being on the show today.
Great, Charlotte. It is a privilege to be with you today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Can you tell me what made you want to start your own business?
Well, I think there's probably everybody's path's different. I know that when I was a young kid and I grew up in a neighborhood with lots of dads and played Little League, I got to observe the parents that were, kind of the Ozzie and Harriet era, where mom stayed home and the dad worked.
Yeah.
And it tended to be the men that were business owners tended to be those that were leaders, and they were, the coaches on the teams, and they were the financially capable of supporting fairly large families and having nice vacations, and it just kind of set kind of a benchmark and said, kind of intuitively, that is kind of the realm that I want to see me carry forward. So when I have a family, I want to care for them and support them and provide for them, and it just seemed like it set kind of a bar, and I wanted to achieve that bar.
What was the process that you went through to start your business?
Well, initially, I came out of school, worked, served under, registered professional engineers, paid the dues, and was oriented to the world of construction, the world of engineering, and I was privileged to work under several really excellent engineers and learn an awful lot. I guess my opportunity came unknowingly when I was the sacrificial lamb. I was low man on totem pole. I was sacrificial. They threw me to the wolves, and I would go out in the field. And what ended up happening is it was kind of a sweet spot for me, because I was able to find solutions that were practical, speak technically when I needed to in the engineering office, and speak pragmatically in the field with the guys that had to build the things. So it kind of became like my go-to point, so I found my path being that intermediary, and it served me well, because if I had to stay in an office all day, I'd go nuts. Or if I sit behind a calculator all day, I'd go nuts. But at the same time, I wanted to use both my technical skill and then also my communications. And so it kind of facilitated solving problems, which is kind of at the heart what engineers do. And so, it was fulfilling. So why and how did I start the business? After I paid those dues and worked in the trenches, if you will, and worked under various different leaders or owners of businesses, I saw things I liked and things I didn't like, as we all do. And so I think the vision was simply, I want to fend for, care for my family, right? Like I saw those coaches in Little League back when I was a kid. I said, okay, I want to have a family, and I want to have a family where the mom can be available to the kids, and the kids can have resources that maybe I didn't have when I was a kid. So my leap was that a business owner would probably have a better path to that. And so that's the direction I took.
And how did you go about starting it? What were the concrete things that you did to launch the business?
So I think the first piece of that is business in and of itself is pretty simple. It's you need to serve a client, and to have that opportunity, right, you need to have the skill set to be able to serve the client. And then what I was always told as a kid is the hardest part of business is getting the work. And I've basically learned that that's totally not what the hardest part of business is. It's just, I went into it kind of naive and, wide-eyed, but, expecting that as long as I did my part, showed up every day, suited up, gave reasonable proposals, served the clients with, excellent service, and then, service with a smile, and answered the phone at 5 o'clock on a Friday because they had an issue, I thought I would, basically forge a path. And so those work opportunities from out of school through, I guess my early 30s were forging that skill set. But starting the business, to answer your specific question, was really me joining a firm that needed our services. In other words, they did pure design and I was a repair rehabilitation kind of specialty guy. And so they complemented their team with our team, and then that's how I started there as a single man in a department. And then that became such a revenue producing team that it spun off as its own LLC. And then over time I paid him off, and then I was on my own. But to the point, what did I not know, right, about starting a business, or what was, and I think the things that we all kind of learn is accounting, bookkeeping, the tax implication, how you manage, track, and then the complicating factors. I mean, keeping licenses up is not really that difficult. It's just an administrative process, and you stay organized. But then it becomes really tricky as you open up like retirement plans. And now you have to add more layers of consultancy to help you manage and stay off the shoals, right? You don't want to trip any hair wires or do anything inappropriate. You become basically a steward of other people's retirement plan, and that's a very large responsibility. The banking, it's pretty much like you're running your own family, and investing or putting the money into equipment. It's always kind of, do I buy the car with the leather or without the leather, right? In engineering, you're buying the program that does 3 things or the program that does 8 things, and you pay for it. So I don't know. I think it's all fairly organic, and it is largely a function of, at least in my mindset, your footing. If you have a footing that is, I have X dollars of revenue on an average, on a monthly ongoing basis, you kind of have a sense of what that next step is, or what you need to build into your organization. But you're never going to, at least in my mind, I'm never going to lay out huge dollars on the come, right? I'm going to buy a giant, in your case, an X-ray machine that's $100,000. I'm making it up in hopes that I get, 10 X-rays a day. I mean, if you're not getting 10 X-rays a day, it probably isn't going to make sense mathematically. So you'll know when it's ready for the next piece. And then there's workarounds. And I'm sure with technology, it's going to get easier and easier for you guys to have remote services and AI stuff. So I don't know. I think it's pretty organic. I think the business itself teaches you business if you have the radar to keep track of all the ancillary pieces. But inevitably, and it's the ultimate question, do you do it because you want to make money? No, you do it because you want a lifestyle, right? And that takes you, in your industry, like mine, professional services, you're going to end up going, do I work till 5 and go home? That's a lifestyle decision, right? Or do I stay later, fit in that one emergency or that extra treatment, and then my revenue goes up, right? But my hours went up, right? There's no magic with professional services. It's not like making a widget and selling 1 million of them on the internet. It's you got to be there. You got to be in the room, I think.
Yeah. I think something interesting that you're mentioning is how you kind of joined with someone else to originally start, and then you went off on your own, or kind of took that part of the business and kind of spun off. Because a lot of times in veterinary medicine, we're either looking at creating our own business from the ground up, or purchasing a business that's already, running under someone else. And that kind of, when you go down that track, you kind of have to be able to read, like a profit and loss statement and kind of understand where the business is at currently, and then decide if you want to come into that business and maybe replace a veterinarian. So I think it's interesting how you started, and I'm also kind of wondering, how much in your business do you do a lot of profit and loss statement reading? How important is that to be able to understand a profit and loss statement when you go and think about purchasing a business or building a business from the ground up?
If the question is, did I step into business already knowing, or is the question, do you assimilate into that understanding? And I think you assimilate pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very simple. There's a cash and accrual.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit for people that aren't accounting majors,
yeah,
right? A little bit of a mind meld to kind of get it together. But once you get on track with it, they're hugely valuable, and they tell you the story. I mean, it's pretty clear what it's telling you once you know what you're looking at.
Did you have a financial advisor that helped you read those statements or start the business or decide when to spin off?
I mean, I guess the partnership to some degree, but it really was a school of, self-taught, maybe conversations with the accountant. There's a lot of things that go on in the accounting realm, nomenclature and jargon, that take a while to kind of get your hands wrapped around it. But when you get that input, it's pretty clear what's going on, and they're only a phone call away. I mean, that's what their service is about, is helping you facilitate that process. So, yeah, I don't think that should be an intimidating factor of a business. Yeah, I think that is the easiest for a person with a science background, math background. That's not going to be the problem. If you know how to keep your own checkbook balanced and not, buy things on credit that you can't afford personally, then business is just a bigger pocketbook with the same decision matrix.
Yeah. So when you started the business, to me, kind of what I'm hearing is you're saying that you definitely had some people on your team. You were self-taught, but you also had, I'm assuming, a lawyer, a financial advisor, an accountant, or whatever, to help you as you started this business. How did you find those people? How did you navigate that so you had a strong team of advisors to help you?
I think that's a good question. And I guess if I go back, I think that when I was first entering into the enterprise that started this as a department, they already had a team, right? I think what's interesting, if I look back now, is, and the analogy is, you go to the club and you work out, and you probably may have a trainer that gives you guidance and advice, and you may go talk to 5 trainers, but one of them you're going to gravitate towards. They're going to kind of more connect, you're going to have more kind of eye to eye and understandings, and you'll connect and get them, right? And I think that's true with all of your service providers. Over time, you're going to find, there's like really good lawyers out there when you need someone to fight and advocate for you, but maybe the lawyer you need to kind of bounce, pretty base hit stuff off of, it might be a different guy. So you kind of find that group, and the more you're in the market, you're going to meet other people that are in the market. So I think that, again, is a very organic process. It's not, and you don't need that, alpha A team right away. You just need to start building the building blocks,
Yeah, I think that's really important too, because I feel like a lot of veterinary students, myself included, are very type A personalities. We want to have everything kind of figured out down to very detailed levels before we jump into something. And I feel like with starting a business, a lot of it is a leap of faith. Would you agree?
Well, you just described, take veterinary medicine out and insert engineer, right? I mean, I think it's exactly right. We're all very detail oriented and into the minutia, and that leap of faith. If there's one thing that I've learned time and time again, there are huge rewards by stepping off that rock. It's not easy, and it's you might have some sleepless nights, but at the end of the day, life's an amazing journey, but it's short, and leap off that rock.
So what do you wish you had known before starting your business?
I guess, and this gets back to that leap of faith thing. I mean, I guess it's almost like if you knew everything, the good and the bad, you probably would be just frozen in fear. Inevitably, what's very funny is, in hindsight, you look back and to your question, you go through, you jump off the rock, you go all feet into this effort and a purpose to try and serve your family and serve the clients and all that stuff. And what are the things that I've now found to be the most challenging? Or the things that I do all the time. So let's look at that. Somebody told me once, running a business is awesome if it weren't for the people. The HR stuff, the touchy-feely stuff. I'm just like, listen, if you're sick, stay home. But if you're here, give me a good 8 hours. It's pretty black and white. But it isn't in the real world, right? It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is true in our world. We do an awful lot of written work product.
Yeah.
If you put me in college English 101 and said, you're going to spend the majority of your career writing, I would have said, not a chance, right? I'm an engineer. Give me a calculator. And inevitably, that's what I do. I do an awful lot of writing. So between writing and HR, I think it's just kind of, those are the challenges that require, because now I'm having to make other people write. Technical people write technically, but at a level that the clients understand. And that's elusive.
Yeah. I think that's a difficult skill, probably not only in your profession, but in ours too, because we have to write medical records. There is a lot of medical record writing that we have to do in our profession in addition to seeing patients, but we have to write in doctor language, but then when we're speaking with the clients, we have to speak in layman's terms so they can understand what we're talking about. So there's a lot of that translation that goes on in veterinary medicine as well, and I can see how that would be a challenge to coach maybe younger engineers or even younger veterinarians in either profession to be able to speak those two languages.
Yeah. And as you said, now you're speaking to a client. And there's two components to that, right? One of them is they have an issue they're very concerned about and they want corrected. In your case, it's potentially life-death issue. So I think it's much more dramatic. But inevitably, I think when you're communicating with these clients, the problem is, you could have a 10:30 meeting and it goes so well, drop the microphone, you're like, I'm the second coming. And by 1:30, you're meeting with someone that just doesn't want to listen or doesn't hear you or for whatever reason, there's just friction. And so it's a never-ending struggle to try and get there. But inevitably, it is the key to success is, appealing to the clients we're serving to give them the information they need in a form they can absorb.
Yeah. What's something people misunderstand about running a business?
I guess for me, what it comes down to is when that new client calls, it's always going to be oftentimes the most inconvenient time. I'm getting ready to pack the car to go on vacation. Do I take this on? How do I manage that? How do I delegate it? Or in the case of a problem on a project that one of the staff is involved in, you have to stop what you're doing and deal with those issues because it's real time, right? You can't defer it. And yet when you're running an enterprise and you're doing, like you said, the tax side and the investment of the money and the bookkeeping and the HR and the whatever, and then on top of that you have your own clients that you're trying to serve, and then you're trying to facilitate with the other guys. They're just it's a financial, it's like you guys when you're taking 18 and 20 credits, right? It's like you got to cover a lot of ground and you can't just ignore one to attend to the other, and you have to just prioritize, but ultimately you have to fit them all in. Right? Every week you got to make class, you got to take the test, you got to get the project done, whatever the lab, and it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's a grind. And so making the time when it's not convenient to make the time ultimately just leaves you with the default, which is I'm going to add it to the end of my day. So then somewhere between 6 o'clock and 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, then you're done and you go home and then you start over again. And that's not always the case, but it seems to be, the case because others don't want to pick up that mantle. And that's hard. That's hard to understand sometimes.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of my mentor, Dr. Godwin, in her practice. Oftentimes if someone calls in with a very sick pet and we already have a completely full schedule, she will say, come at 7, and we close at 7. So I find that interesting, the parallels between the two, in that sometimes you do have to pick up that mantle, whereas maybe someone who doesn't own a business doesn't feel inclined to go out of their way to do that. Whereas for you, that's part of building your business, building your name, building your clientele. So I think that is definitely a big difference between being, for us, an associate veterinarian and maybe a business owner.
Yeah, I would just add, though, that it's not just in building it. It's literally sustaining it, right? So, if you don't say, yes, I'll see you at 7, that client's going to find someone else that will.
Yeah.
And you've got a history with them, or you've invested, you're committed, you know them personally. It's a lot easier to maintain a client than it is to earn a new client. So when you have that privilege, you just have to be very, very careful. And I guess teaching that or passing that on to the younger staff that are going to pick up that, passion, I think that's a wiring thing. I think some people are wired for it and some people may just not be, or maybe they're not engaged enough. I don't know what the magic trick is, but I know that I see it in some people, like they just thrive like a duck to water, and then others, it's not their thing. Yeah. And there's also seasons of life. There's times when, you've got young kids at home, you got to go and take care of the kids, and that's fine, So I think it's just a function of where you are in your life, and I think for your folks, very bright people, very passionate people. I mean, some of the people you've had on this podcast, amazingly insightful in terms of the depth and width of their prior experiences or character, or their life story. So I think some people that innately have it in their gut, it's the grit, right? I think it's just a grit. If you are going to show up every day and you want it, you will be fine. You will be fine, but you got to want it, because it's not an easy trip.
Well, I think a lot of veterinarians out there want it. I just don't know if a lot of them want to have a business, want it, you know what I mean? That's where I know for me, I'm trying to figure that out, which is why I'm doing VBMA, Veterinary Business Management Association, and stuff like that, talking with business owners like you and other veterinarians to just try to feel and understand what that's going to look like if that's something I want to pursue, and really understand the risks associated and, like you said, the lifestyle changes that are going to be associated with it as well. But switching gears a little bit to talk about team and people, which you've kind of touched on already, what are the keys to managing a team well?
I am probably least qualified to answer this question. And I say that just because I'm pretty hard on myself. I want to see that. I literally look at this business as kind of the model you have when you watch NFL football and you watch the coach, or the high school, right? Was that Friday Night Lights or whatever it is, right? You have the coach yelling, don't drop the ball, blah 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 blah, right? But his goal isn't to be mean. It's to incentivize the kid to do a better job, because if he catches the ball, he helps the team. If the team furthers the ball down the field and the team puts the ball in the end zone, the team wins, right? Or the team benefits. And I think everyone in a business should be a team member thinking like a team, and the goal should be, in this example, the Super Bowl or whatever, the end of the year bonus, or however you want to structure that. So I think that inevitably, when you go to find work, you're trying to find work in an environment that matches your thing. So if I'm a coach and you don't like that coach model where he's going to tell you when you did great and put a sticker on your helmet, and he's going to tell you when you drop the ball not to drop the ball, and let's work on the calisthenics or the weight room, or do whatever you got to do to improve your skills. Those criticisms, if they're critical for the purposes of being mean and nasty, then it's not a good vibe for you. But if it's to help coach the team to be better, that's awesome. But I also find that a lot of people don't match up well with the facts, right? They don't like to hear the not best part of their performance, right? They don't like the critical input. And I guess no one does. But I don't know how you improve if you don't get that. Like if you keep dropping the ball and then, we just go, here's a sticker for your helmet. How does that better you? I don't know. So I think, how do you build a team? I think you find the right people, right? And then once you get them in place, it's pretty organic. But it's back to then, how do you keep them happy? One of them wants more hours and more money, and the other one wants to leave at 5, right? So now you have to titrate, right? It's kind of like, it's a chemistry experiment to try and figure out how to get everybody rowing in the right direction and yet customize their trip, right? So that they all feel heard and valued and engaged and stimulated. But it's elusive.
Yeah. I feel like that is something that for me sounds very challenging when it comes to running a business. I think that I can see how you have had challenges, like you said, especially with providing constructive criticism. And I feel like that is such an important part, not, I'm assuming, as an engineer when you're dealing with buildings and things like that, but also when you're dealing with patients. We need everyone included, your business, my business, we need to have people that are able to receive constructive criticism and to take that and to be able to change what you're doing for the betterment of our patients, our service, and stuff like that. And so I do wonder why people are so resistant to constructive criticism. I personally thrive on it. I love getting feedback. I like knowing what I'm not doing well, what I can do to improve. But it seems like some people are just not really interested in hearing that. And I wonder if it is because they think it's an attack on their character or who they are as a human being. And the reality is, if for anyone who's listening out there, constructive criticism is good for you. It means the person's coming alongside you, wants to help you, wants you to grow. It's really kind of their ability to invest in you. So I think that as a profession, as a human being, you need to be able to receive constructive criticism so that you can continue to grow. And I feel like without that, we can't grow. So I know there are students probably in my class and veterinarians as a whole that don't like constructive criticism, but I appreciate you bringing that up because I feel like that's a really good point. How do you handle failure or mistakes?
That's a great question, and yet there's multiple layers to it. So there's, okay, I'm doing a project and I didn't do as good a job as I should have done. What am I going to learn from it? How am I going to manage that? And then how am I going to teach the rest of the team to avoid that minefield, right? That's one whole set of like processes. New paragraph. What if it's someone else in the staff that's made a bad decision or given the wrong directive? Now it's doubly challenging because, as you said, it's not just the constructive criticism that has to come with that, which is difficult for people to swallow, but it's also now impact them and them personally and the business and how it impacts the business and the organization, right? So it's like a double kind of edged sword on it's kind of a tricky process. So I think in a perfect world, if you're the top of the pyramid and someone in surgery room 2 is doing something, you kind of feel they're handling it, but you also want them to know you're available to help them so as to avoid an issue. So you kind of want to nip it in the butt, right? You want to deal with it before it ever becomes a problem, but that's where you then have to be touching a lot of bases, right? You as the guy running around to all the surgical rooms going, everybody good, right, everybody good, right? You don't want to be a micromanager, and at the same time, you don't want to be kind of an absentee manager, especially in professional services, because at any given moment, someone could be making a decision that could be problematic. And I think in my firm, what we try to do is create what I call, if you've ever been to the circus and you see them shoot out a cannon, they put a big net, right? I want that safety net, proverbially, to be everyone on the staff. So if I'm doing something and they see it that they don't understand or not sure it makes sense, I want them to say something, right? And the flip side is I want that culture to be, reciprocal 360. Everybody has a chance to look at everybody else's work and help bring the whole, the common denominator up, right? We want to bring the denominator up with the value of the collective, because I think there's no one person that knows it all. Everybody has something to contribute, but when something goes wrong, it's because that didn't happen, right? The checks and balances, something wasn't in place to catch it when it was a little thing before it becomes a big thing. So hopefully, by the grace of God, we don't have those. Because in my world, things fall down and go boom. People get killed. Your world, animals suffer. So do no harm, right?
Yeah, that makes me think of see something, say something. Yeah,
that's exactly
if you see
right.
a mistake, you see something that's wrong, you need to say something. And I think that's really important in vet med too, even with technicians making sure that technicians feel empowered to, when they're pulling up a drug, if they're like, this drug seems like too much for this patient, being like, hey, to the veterinarian, hey, can we double check this math or something? Or, in the practice that I just externed in, the techs are doing a lot of calculating the drugs as well. They're empowered to calculate drugs. We give them doses, so being able to cross-check each other is really important.
I think it's exactly right. You want the whole team feeling like they have a stake. Yeah. And I think that's the culture you want, because the stakeholder culture is the one that leads you to that position where, yeah, maybe you're in a big practice, but you're going to move up in the role of a leader, the role of some kind of financial steward, participating in the meetings, So stakeholder is kind of the foundation for all of that. And if you're a technician, I see a value in a stakeholder. Right? I could have a drafting person that is of value as a stakeholder. The admin person can be a stakeholder because they're capturing and sieving out the things that aren't, in line with our organizational culture and plan and vision and mission, roles and goals and all that. Anybody should be empowered to say something. I know there's ego, right? Nobody likes, the boss doesn't like to be questioned. It's how you do it. But at the end of the day, I celebrate it. I celebrate it when someone catches something that is not right. I love that, especially if it's before it ever went out the door.
Yeah. And I think something we're kind of touching on too is a big challenge that veterinarians and veterinary students are facing right now, because a lot of these things that we're talking about, which it's, being able to see a way to go up the ladder, it's very clear when you join a lot of corporate veterinary practices the way you're going to be able to ascend up the ladder. The place I just worked, it's clear how you become an associate. You can then become a medical director, own your own practice, have stake in the practice. You can go into hiring. It's very clear how you can grow as a leader, grow as a person, grow financially in these corporate practices. And that is another thing that I think people battle when they're deciding whether or not to start their own practice, because obviously that ascension is not clear, and it's not clear how much financial freedom you can get from it as well. And these corporate practices look like the Taj Mahal. They look incredibly appealing because it's so clear the pathway that you can take through them. And I think that's probably something you face as an engineer as well, is trying to get people in who are not looking to go corporate. I'm sure a lot of engineers see the same thing and want to go to big corporate practices. What do you think the pros and cons are for working for a smaller firm, in your case, or a smaller practice in veterinary medicine versus a corporate practice?
Well, I think a lot has changed. I think what you're bringing up is exactly, I think, the dilemma. If an organization, whatever, it's on Wall Street or it's got a large footprint, a nationwide footprint, they dangle a lot of carrots, right? So there are a lot of really boxes, a lot of nice boxes to check right off from the get-go. And I don't know that there is a negative to it. I think it comes back to what is it you want, right? So in my realm, it's, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? And I'm not suggesting that corporate is a small fish in a big pond, but if they've got 80 offices and you're somewhere on the top third of the pyramid at that office, that may be a very comfortable place for you. It's all a function of your wiring. But, if you're an alpha, like if you're a type A driven person and you get into one of those 180 offices, and I'm making up a stupid number, right? And you hit your head on the ceiling because the guys ahead of you have to die or retire to get out, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be, it may work for 2, 5, 7 years, right? You'll buy the house, you'll get the pool, you'll get the vacation home or whatever, and then all of a sudden you'll go, I want more. Right? And so now what happens? And that's where I guess the smaller entrepreneurial pursuit may peak out in you. And quite frankly, there aren't a lot of people that want the grief anymore. Like when I was a kid, owning a business was a big deal, and that's what you wanted to do. It's what you strived to, as I started with. But at the end of the day, I think people that are wired to want to make the decisions, or when they're working in an environment where they don't think that the decisions mate up with what their vision would be for them, that's when they get anxious, and then they may want to pursue other opportunities. But in your realm, I don't know. I think, there's so much change that's taking place. This AI thing. I'm sure you're going to be diagnosing animals using AI, and then you're just going to be doing the treatments, and I can't even imagine what your career is going to be like because of the trajectory of the things that are available to you now that wouldn't have been 15 and 20 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah. One final question for you. What do you have to say to any veterinary students who maybe have a dream of owning a practice one day?
Pursue it. I mean, if it's a dream, it's like we said, it's if you have a grit, if you have a determination, right? You have to follow it. You owe it to yourself to pursue that to its logical conclusion. You may make it work. You may choose not at the last minute. You may, pivot. But at the end of the day, if it's in you, if it's in your gut, it's not going to go away until you reconcile it, So, just live your dream. I mean, just go for it. Be as prepared as you can be. But, when you decide to start a business, it's kind of like jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
Yeah.
All you can do is make sure your chute's folded right and, go. And the rest is going to be what it's going to be. But you'll land on your feet, And ultimately, you guys, I mean, it's what an awesome career, right? You're taking Fido and you're making him better, right? You're helping people. I mean, your mom and I are in this retirement phase, right? Where it's like, okay, what does that look like? And you do a lot of reading before you start into the retirement phase. And the only article every article has a common denominator. You know what the common denominator is? If you want to have a fulfilling and a satisfying retirement, you have to do volunteer work, right? You have to have some activity like, your faith or your church or whatever, relationships and friends. But every article varies, but they all have one thing in common. Have a dog. Have a pet.
Oh, really?
Oh, my gosh. It's like you have to have, the kids are gone. You got to have some kid. You got to have something else to invest in and care for and love. And so, I mean, you guys have a career in a legacy field, right? No one's ever going to get rid of animals. So that's awesome, right? So now your goal is to try and make them live longer and have better lives. And I think that's pretty cool.
Pretty admirable.
Admirable.
Yeah.
Admirable.
Yeah. Well, Dad, I really enjoyed interviewing you today. I feel like I learned so much about you and about your experience as a business owner, and hopefully it'll help anyone out there that's considering starting their own business, too. So my name is Grace Gaynor, and I just interviewed my dad, Kipp Gaynor, and we are Scrubbing Out. That's a wrap for today's episode of Scrubbed In, the DVM Journey. Thanks for tuning in and being a part of our community of future vets and animal lovers. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps others find the show and join the conversation. And if you have any questions or topics you'd love to hear about, feel free to leave us a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep scrubbing in, and remember, the journey to becoming a DVM is one step at a time.